You said that India is poor because of colonization. Then how do you explain the poverty of Nepal, which was never colonized? This is a good question. Let's understand something. So, what is Nepal? Nepal is a nation state, right? First of all, the concept of the nation state begins in the 17th century with the Treaty of Westphalia, which happened in 1648, 1650, thereabouts. Look it up if you want to. The Treaty of Westphalia is what created eventually, in the long run, the concept of the Westphalian nation state and the nation state system that we all live under today. But for the entirety of human history, we've never had nations. We've had kingdoms, empires, and all that. That's all we had. So now, Nepal, these are facts. Don't hate me for it. I am just presenting evidence. You can look it up. Nepal is a relatively young nation state founded solely on the basis of the conquests of one man, Prithvi Narayan Shah, the founder of Nepal. So he was the ruler of the Gorkhas in today's central Nepal. Hmm? And historically, Nepal, this region which we now call Nepal, it's been part of various Indian kingdoms and empires. It was part of the Mauryan Empire, it was part of the Kushan Empire, it was part of the Gupta Empire, it was part of the Magadha kingdom, and so on and so forth, and so on and so forth. It's always been parts of various Indian kingdoms and empires, and they're the same people as us. Nepalis are not a different race or anything else. Same culture, same people, same blood, same everything. Right? So, after this gentleman, Prithvi Narayan Shah, captured Kathmandu in the Nevar Valley or Nepal Valley in the 18th century, mid 18th century, roughly, he made it the capital of his kingdom, and his kingdom was named after the Nevar Valley, Nepal. So, why did Nepal avoid absorption into the British Raj, into British India, when it was always part of various Indian kingdoms and empires? Why was that? It was able to avoid absorption into the British Indian Raj because it was useful as a buffer state between British India and the Chinese occupied Tibet. So there was a time when there was a Qing dynasty garrison in Tibet. So the British wanted to create some safe separation between British India and the Chinese occupied Tibet. So they used Nepal as a buffer state, and that's why they kept it autonomous. Now, just because there was a king in Nepal who was de facto or nominally autonomous from the British doesn't mean that he was completely autonomous. The economy of the entire subcontinent is interrelated, right? So if you have one kingdom that is not part of the British Raj, it doesn't mean it's completely economically independent. Everything is interrelated, it's interdependent. It's an organism, in an economic organism. And the heartland of the Indian subcontinent, the wealth of the Indian subcontinent, has always been in the river valleys. India is a river valley civilization, whether it's the Indus Valley, the Saraswati Valley, the Ganga Valley, the Yamuna Valley, the Godavari Valley, the Tapti Valley, the whatever. It's always been a river valley civilization. That's where the wealth always lies. The Nevar Valley is high up in the mountains. What are the sources of wealth and income there? Nothing. Why do the people of Nepal come to India to work? First of all, because we are the same people, we have open borders, but because there is employment generation, wealth opportunities, etc., in the valleys and the plains of India, right? So just because Prithvi Narayan Shah and his successors were independent nominally doesn't mean that they would have been extremely prosperous. Nepal is in the mountains, in the hills. There's no great source of wealth over there. And also, let's not forget that the independence of Nepal from the British was only nominal. They allowed him to remain independent. It was their choice, but there would have been conditions. Let's take an example, a painful example. Who fired the bullets in the Jallianwala Bagh massacre? I believe there was a company of about 50 soldiers. 25 of these soldiers were either Balochis or Pashtuns, right? Slaves of the British Raj, Indians who fired upon Indians. So 25 of these soldiers were Balochis and Pashtuns. The other 25 of these soldiers who fired the bullets in the Jallianwala Bagh massacre were Gorkhas. They belonged to the nine Gorkha Rifles. Who were they? They were Nepalese. So if Nepal was so independent, why were Gorkhas and Nepalese serving in the British Raj and firing upon their fellow Indians? These are facts, right? And if Nepal was so prosperous at the time, why did they have to come and work for the British Raj? So the fact is that being a hilly, mountainous kingdom, Nepal never had any great sources of income. The entire subcontinent was one economic entity. And when Nepal was prosperous, it was because the whole country was prosperous. And when the British destroyed the country, when the British plundered and transferred all the wealth, 45 trillion plus dollars of worth of wealth from India, Nepal also suffered the consequences of that. When the whole country was prosperous, even these far flung hilly regions would have benefited from the prosperity. When India was destroyed, the far flung hilly regions, even if they were nominally independent, also declined, because where's the money? So that is what happened. So Nepal was never colonized officially, but yeah, all of these facts are facts. The Nepalese were serving in the British Raj in a variety of capabilities, capacities, right? And even today, there are Nepalese Gorkhas who go and serve in the British Army because it's financial benefits.